harm reduction and trauma informed practices. And there's no, I'll be honest with you guys, there's no there's no magic wand, right? So there's no magic wand on what's best and what works. Everything we'll talk about today is it's best practice and evidence informed. And we all know we work in the field. We work with individuals who have substance use, mental health concerns, and we all know that one size doesn't fit all, right? So it just the concept of harm reduction is very polarizing in the community. I'll be honest with you guys. And when I started working for addictions and mental health, it was like, oh, it was abstinence only, and so like come to see us when you're ready. And then we're realizing we closed the door to a lot of people who could have just had a safe space to talk about their substance use, right? And have a space to, I want to change, but I want to change at my pace. All right, cool. Like, worry, Paul. Yeah, like, come on in. Like, we want to talk to you, right? Before we start, do you guys see my screen?
The Addiction Mental Health Service screen?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Awesome. Merci. Perfect. Thank you. So I appreciate it. I can't see a lot of you guys, so if ever I toggle between screens, let me know. Like, hey, Serge, dude, ça change pas. It does not changing. Before we start, I always like to do a little roundtable on anybody's expectations today. Like, really, like, is there anything like you guys ever wanted to know? Is there anything you're more curious about, or if you're like, you can even really, I'll be honest, I'm not, hopefully I'm not being recorded. By the way, if you have any dark secrets to share, you should have done it before we recorded. Right? But if you want to crap on the government, yes, you can. I can take it. I agree with all of you. We can do a lot better in what's going on. So it's good to be humble. Any questions or anything or expectations from today, guys? I'm going to write it down so that I can hopefully get those answered. Anything, expectations, anything. You can say français, anglais, French and English, shuck, take your pick.
So harm reduction, you're going to talk a lot about today about letting or having people use in front of you and how to make sure that they're doing it the right way.
Not specifically. That is part of the continuum. It's not the expectations for everybody. So that's a good point, Joe. Is that a lot of times some people have that, like, oh, is it allowing people to use? No, it's actually just a philosophy of, it could be more of a way of working with people. It could be, just changing your language with regards to them. It could just be a language thing. Sometimes we use language that we don't know is harmful, right? And stuff. So it's really a whole spectrum of continuum of things for harm reduction. So I'll be going through them all.
All right.
Anybody else?
I think for me, Serge, there's very few things that are less polarizing and divisive in the work that we do than the definitions around harm reduction. Even internal, we try to help people understand that we do harm reduction in so many different ways, but we don't even know it, right? So I think we need some clear messaging around what that looks like. And I think a general feeling that it's okay to be somewhere on the continuum as long as we're working all from the same models. So I assume you're going to run through that, but that's to me how we're going to all come together at the end of the day.
We're all going to hold hands and like, yeah, we're in this together. But Mark, we hopefully I can provide you guys with information that you guys can really, it'll clarify some things, and at the same time you can be like, you know what, yeah, that works for us, ça marche, not that doesn't work for us, and that's okay, and this, so you can really pick and choose what you guys want, right? So that's a good point. Thanks, Mark. Anybody else? You guys are not like shy though.
I've gotten a few situations where they just don't care. They just don't care. They want to do what they want to do. Even for instance, being put outside the shelter because of their behavior, demanding that they're going to go back in no matter what.
Right. So managing
That's a hard situation to diffuse. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's setting, like you have to be flexible, but at the same time, kind of more clear boundaries, right? So that's always good. And sometimes it's setting the expectations before they get in, right? It's like and
Yes.
sometimes being able to recognize when they're not, because a lot of times there's warning signs beforehand that a person's not doing well, or they're like
Mhm.
escalating, and it's because of things that are happening in their environment it could be a shelter, supportive housing, or whatever. So it's really about how can we be able as a staff to be able to identify to kind of redirect that energy somewhere else, right? So that's a good point.
No.
Yep.
Yes, there's Sharon here from House of Nazareth. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go.
Yeah, no, well, I'm doing up some courses and trainings for our staff, and I want to do something on pre-escalation and also how to, better de-escalate and reduce the amount of restrictions, because it also has a lot to do with us as well and how we interact. So I want hopefully to get some insight and some good tools from you that I can continue to put into our courses here.
Cool. Hopefully it helps a little bit. This is really something general, not specific to like anything, but you know what? There are some tools in here like the comfort plan and, trauma informed practices, changing our space, changing our approach, our practices, just to sometimes just the way even our space that we're in, changing can change the behaviors, right? So, and that's what we want to do, right? Is to try to, at least we give him a chance to be able to have a nice space to be in, and it's challenging. It's not always easy. So if you guys ever go to our services at Addictions and Mental Health, like how cold can those spaces be, right? Not super trauma informed. It's like, wow, how many more? Did you guys run out of white paint? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, wow, like it's so bright, man. Right? So it's like we need to change. And what I'll do is I'll show you guys actually I'm going to add it to the presentation during my videos. A slide from our intensive day treatment program, and our living treatment program in Hamilton. And I'll send you the videos of that space, and you'll see we're changing a lot of our space to be able to reduce some of the sensory stuff people go through. Like I have multiple concussions, lights bother me. Right. So, and I didn't know that it triggers me. Like I get really irritated by light. Right. So it's like just knowing that from a person, we can help mitigate a lot of those stuff. Right. So. Merci. Good questions. IDT. We try. Thanks, V. Good to see you. Anything else? You're good? You guys are like, get started, buddy. All right. Anytime during the presentation, feel free, guys, to chime in, to add questions, to add comments. There's no right or wrong. I want you guys to feel it's a safe space. Just to give you guys a little background on me, my name is Serge. I am a senior health consultant with the Department of Health, the Addictions and Mental Health branch. So essentially, I don't do frontline anymore, which I miss a lot. I work on planning programs, trying to work with our stakeholders, working with people to try to see how we can break our own internal barriers that we have for people to access care. But I worked 20 years as a clinician in addictions and mental health and detox, youth, everywhere's, all programs, right? I had a good time. I was a manager, didn't like to be a manager. It's not fun. And for all you people in the room who manage people, it's not fun, right? It's love. Sometimes I'd be like, the clients gave me an easier time, man. It was like, so it's not always easy, but I really want you guys to feel free to ask any questions. So I will get started. So if you guys remember when we were in school, which wasn't always fun for all of us, you remember when you used to walk into the class and there'd be that TV in the class and you'd be like, oh yeah, today we're watching a movie, man. We're all happy, right? Because you're not going to learn anything. You're going to watch some stuff on TV. My presentation, I'm hoping you guys have access to it. I'm going to upload it onto the chat. Has a couple of presentations, like YouTube videos that I share with to everybody that I used to do this video. I used to share it with clients when I used to do groups. It's has a lot of value. It comes from actually a book called Chasing the Scream, The First and Last Days of the War on Drugs. And there's a longer YouTube video, which I'm not gonna like bore you guys. It's a 5-minute one. But I think it really reflects how sometimes if we change our approach with regards to individuals who use substances and understand where they're coming from, and knowing what's research is telling us on what works best, right? We can realign, right, and try to look at how we can do business differently. Because when I used to do group, like at Addictions and Mental Health, all of our services are based on essentially meeting the client where they're at, meeting the individuals. So we don't want people to feel like when they come to us that they're forced to do anything, right? Because then you don't get the buy-in, right? But we have to be able to match our intervention with the individual who's in front of us. So whatever change they want to make, it's good change. I've seen clients come to my groups that wanted to stop everything. I'm like, high five, dude. Do that, dudes, whatever. Or there'd be people who were like, hey, like, you know what? I want to stop this, not that. I'd be like, high five. Or they'd be like, you know what? I just want to reduce right now. Hey, high 10. We're good, right? So like it's really, because if we go with the abstinence only in our services, people will not likely access our services. They'll think that it's a barrier, and we really wanted to kind of break that down, right? So and in my groups, whenever I did group, I never really focused on the drug. I'd focus a lot on the reasoning why we're using a drug, right? Because that's the really important thing. If any of us here in the room have lived experience, I think we all have lived experience in some capacity, right? You know, we all know that at different times in our lives, and even our Dr. Moncton would say that, Dr. Lord, he'd always say, like, everybody once in their lives had an issue with alcohol. Like, it says 80%, the other 20% are in denial, right? Because there's situations in our lives that happen that we increase. It could be situational stress. It could be a breakup. It could be just life in general. We overuse alcohol, but a lot of us have the ability to re-regulate our alcohol use, right? So, and be able to come back to a healthy space. Other people's, it's depends, right? So this video is cool. I like it. I show it to clients. I will give you guys just a heads up. There are images potentially of substance use in there, but it's cartoonish, right? It's called Addiction and Connection. And what's really cool about this book is that it doesn't talk about the substance. It's really focusing on a person's response to not feeling connected to anything, which substance use kind of helps with that, right? Because substance use is a form of connection, right? So it's really all about kind of just getting a better understanding. I showed this to clients and they would love it. They're like, this video, I connect to it. So I'm going to stop talking. I will stop sharing this screen. And when I share the video, please tell me, Serge, we can hear it. If it doesn't work, say like, yo, dude, it doesn't work. All right. So I want to make sure. So I will stop sharing that and I will share my screen. And also just another disclaimer, the language in this, we do not use. So you will hear language like junkie, you will hear language like addict, alcoholic, all these slang terms that we use. We do not use those because for some individuals, they're very harmful, right, to label. So what we use is person first language. So that's reducing harm. So if there's harm when somebody labels themselves, providing them choices on other ways of identifying themselves can be actually, wow, this is better for me. It's less like shameful or stigmatizing to me, right? So you're going to notice they use that language in there. It's not because they use the language because that's what society calls individuals with has substance use disorders, right, or concerns. And when I include substance use, gambling as well is in there. We keep forgetting about that one, right? So it's a high issue. It's a high problem because a lot of people lose a lot of money very quickly in gambling. So there's a lot of more risks involved. All right, so I will get out of this. Get out of this, stop that again, and share again. Do you think I'd have this figured out? Okay, can you guys see my red screen?
Yes,
right?
sir.
Right on. Thanks, Joseph. Thank you. I'm going to put it on. Tell me if it works or not, okay?
What causes, say, heroin addiction? This is a really stupid question, right? It's obvious. We all know it. Heroin causes heroin addiction. Here's how it works. If you use heroin for 20 days, by day 21, your body would physically crave the drug ferociously because there are chemical hooks in the drug. That's what addiction means. But there's a catch. Almost everything we think we know about addiction is wrong. If you, for example, break your hip, you'll be taken to a hospital and you'll be given loads of diamorphine for weeks or even months. Diamorphine is heroin. It's in fact much stronger heroin than any addict can get on the street because it's not contaminated by all the stuff drug dealers dilute it with. There are people near you being given loads of deluxe heroin in hospitals right now. So at least some of them should become addicts. But this has been closely studied. It doesn't happen. Your grandmother wasn't turned into a junkie by her hip replacement. Why is that? Our current theory of addiction comes in part from a series of experiments that were carried out earlier in the 20th century. The experiment is simple. You take a rat and put it in a cage with 2 water bottles. One is just water, the other is water laced with heroin or cocaine. Almost every time you run this experiment, the rat will become obsessed with the drugged water and keep coming back for more and more until it kills itself. But in the 1970s, Bruce Alexander, a professor of psychology, noticed something odd about this experiment. The rat is put in the cage all alone. It has nothing to do but take the drugs. What would happen, he wondered, if we tried this differently? So he built Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats. It's a lush cage where the rats would have colored balls, tunnels to scamper down, plenty of friends to play with, and they could have loads of sex. Everything a rat about town could want. And they would have the drugged water and the normal water bottles. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, rats hardly ever use the drugged water. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. But maybe this is a quirk of rats, right? Well, helpfully, there was a human experiment along the same lines, the Vietnam War. 20% of American troops in Vietnam were using a lot of heroin. People back home were really panicked because they thought there would be hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war was over. But a study followed the soldiers home and found something striking. They didn't go to rehab. They didn't even go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped after they got home. If you believe the old theory of addiction, that makes no sense. But if you believe Professor Alexander's theory, it makes perfect sense. Because if you're put into a horrific jungle in a foreign country where you don't want to be, and you could be forced to kill or die at any moment, doing heroin is a great way to spend your time. But if you go back to your nice home with your friends and your family, it's the equivalent of being taken out of that first cage and put into a human rat park. It's not the chemicals, it's your cage. We need to think about addiction differently. Human beings have an innate need to bond and connect. When we are happy and healthy, we will bond with the people around us. But when we can't, because we're traumatized, isolated, or beaten down by life, we will bond with something that gives us some sense of relief. It might be endlessly checking a smartphone, it might be pornography, video games, Reddit, gambling, or it might be cocaine. But we will bond with something because that is our human nature. The path out of unhealthy bonds is to form healthy bonds, to be connected to people you want to be present with. Addiction is just one symptom of the crisis of disconnection that's happening all around us. We all feel it. Since the 1950s, the average number of close friends an American has been steadily declining. At the same time, the amount of floor space in their homes has been steadily increasing. To choose floor space over friends, to choose stuff over connection. The war on drugs we've been fighting for almost a century now has made everything worse. Instead of helping people heal and getting their life together, we have cast them out from society. We have made it harder for them to get jobs and become stable. We take benefits and support away from them if we catch them with drugs. We throw them in prison cells, which are literally cages. We put people who are not well in a situation that makes them feel worse and hate them for not recovering. For too long, we've talked only about individual recovery from addiction. But we need now to talk about social recovery, because something has gone wrong with us as a group. We have to build a society that looks a lot more like Rat Park and a lot less like those isolated cages. We are going to have to change the unnatural way we live and rediscover each other. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
Okay.
Good video.
Comments.
Good video.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Joseph. It just short resonates, right? It just kind of, wow, oh, geez, some good basic info. What do you guys think?
It makes sense the rat by himself killed himself
Mhm.
because he was lonely. He had no one to associate with at all. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Loneliness, right? And the substance use is a connection. And if that's the only thing we're doing, oh, geez, like after a while, it'll take us. So you're right. Anybody else?
Serge, this had a big impact on me when I did see that one time before, and it certainly did have a big impact. And I've been kind of hoping that maybe I could help, change the cage and make, change the environment as much as I could. But now I'm also looking at individuals that have a perception of being in a cage, and this is where I get my questions. Say if someone has a loving family, has everything they need and everything they want, and then they feel like they're in a cage. Now, this is where I'm looking to be able to break through in my understanding.
Yeah, that's a good point, eh? I saw you got a couple bobbleheads in the room now. It's like the person's living within those kind of internal barriers, and sometimes it's they're experiencing shame, right, and guilt, and sometimes we've all done things we're not proud of, and sometimes it limits us to bond with those people because it's connecting with them, and it's difficult, right? So it's how can we start that transition back slowly and safely for those people, right? It's creating that safe space for them. Those connections are important. Anybody else? Who here was their first time seeing it? Hopefully everybody. Come on. Thanks, Will. Thank you. You're like, you're the only people I can see. So I'm like, cool. So I like the video. I was telling you guys, there are some images that are kind of like sometimes I would always tell clients like, disclaimer and stuff. Some of them are like, it's good. I'm okay right now. But if you're not comfortable right now, it's okay. We'll watch it another time. Like we say in Francais, in chaque worry pas, right? So we kind of, don't worry about it. I like one thing that they said. They said the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. That always resonates every time, right? And social recovery. We always talk about that person's gotta recover, right? Like you gotta, let's go, let's get together and do this. It's about you. But I like that. I think we can all agree that somewheres the problems are only getting more acute because somewheres we're feeling sometimes disconnected. Like as COVID, we all know that alcohol use went up, cannabis use went up, like everything went up. People were alone, isolated, right? So naturally, a lot of people kind of went to that. So whenever I do presentations to cities, like the mayor or whoever, right? I'm like, hi, I'm Serge, and you're like, you're supposed to fix this problem. It's like, okay, I wish I could, because I'm like a firm believer in housing first and then doing services after, right? Like I'm a super firm believer in that. Like, people are like, you got to put psychologists in shelters. I'm like, no, not best practice. You're opening up a can of worms, like detox units. We open up a can of worms and then you can't close it. They're discharged or leaving, right? They're done their treatment. So it's like, oh, that's dangerous, more harmful. But whenever I do presentations to cities, I really focus on that because I say we're all in this really together, not to sound cliche, but it's like, how are we going to include these individuals in our community? How are we going to make them feel that they're connected to the community? They don't need to be banished to some out of zone city limit place. And they're not in my face, right? So I'm okay now. Like it's going to happen. How can we include individuals with lived experience and living? We forget about them. They have a huge voice in this. This wouldn't work, guys. This may work. Okay, let's try to work together on this, right? But it's how are we going to make individuals feel like they're part of a community? Because they are, right? So how can we connect them to our communities and build systems within to make sure that they are, right? So that we can give them a chance of change, right? And change, and like I tell people all the time when I do presentations, there are a lot of people who use substances that are able to keep their housing, right? So sometimes it's less, they're using a substance, it's not impactful to others around them, which is good. It's safer, not harmful to others around, and they can keep their housing. It's, so sometimes when I say that to people like in especially cities and other departments, they sometimes say like, oh really? I'm like, absolutely. People are able to keep their housing. It's just some people need a little bit more support services for a transition part, right? To make sure that they can keep the housing and we can provide supports to them. So,
So when you have people like that, do you encourage them to go like Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous? Because those programs are designed for people to live in society and have control over their life or their drug use or whatever, right?
Yeah, like that's a good point. So I, as a clinician, would always present the options that also include moderation management groups that are online, groups that are not affiliated with AA, because so just to give you guys a little bit of statistics, it's been indicated that about 90% or 95% of the individuals that go to one AA, NA, or support group meeting don't go back, right? So like that's a huge gap, right? So like we're saying like, whoa, maybe the 12 steps is not for them. Maybe it was harmful for them. Maybe it was harmful to go to a Life Ring meeting in the past, which is a complete different group, right? So what I always do is present them with the options and say, for you, which one meets your needs the best, right? Like, is it moderation management because you really don't want to stop right now, but you want to learn to moderate it and create less harm? Let's try this and reassess, right? If it doesn't work for you, no worries. We can try to find something else, right? I always believe in presenting options and saying, take your pick. Right. So AA could work for some people. Some people are like, yes, it works for me. I'm like, oh, do it. Right. Connect, engage. It's part of that, recovery community. Right. And some people are like, I tried this. It didn't work for me. Let's try to find something else. Right. Let's just try to look at the options at all times. So it's really dependent on the person. If anybody tells you guys that they have the answer to how to cure addiction, run away from those people. Because I'll be honest with you, it's very distinct for each person. Very, very distinct, right? So not one size fits all, like housing. We got to create more variety of housing. We at Addictions and Mental Health need to do things differently with people. We need to create different teams, right? To be able to work with people there. So it really all depends, man. It's a good question, Joseph, because it's like, clients would tell me like, well, what am I going to do? Like how? I'm like, it's your recipe, right? I always say it's your recipe, right? And we're just you're the chef. I'm just here to kind of be like my 3-year-old who's trying to cook with me sometimes and she makes more of a mess. But hey, that's okay, right? Kind of help and do stuff, but the individual really guides their boat, right? So
Serge, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go, Sharon.
One thing that I did discover even more recently now as a shelter manager here is that there is a community. The people who use and abuse substance is a community in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they get a sense of belonging to that community.
Absolutely.
And so when we talk about housing first, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
We are a housing focused shelter, but I've heard comments from individuals that I've sat with, and they've said, well, you know what, like I'll be all alone if I go to a house.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'm not ready. So at this point, like, there's a big gray area in which how can we replace that sense of belonging to a community that's not conducive to doing drugs?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you guys that one size does not fit all. So there are individuals who prefer more of that lone wolf approach. Like I'd rather be alone just to kind of do my recovery journey, because when I'm surrounded by people who talk about using or not using it, it can be a trigger for me. Other people need that sense of community, right? So clustered housing, sometimes it's good. Maybe you have 4 apartments linked together with individuals who have similar life experiences, right? who can support each other, but are supported by a case management team. You know what I mean? There's ways we can do it and then transition them to other things afterwards, right? Like it's kind of like you start there, you're not alone. Because I get you guys. I used to hear that all the time. They tell me like, Serge, they come back to the shelter. We gave him housing. They come back to the shelter. They're like, I miss the people, right? They go back to the encampments, right? They're like, I just miss that connection, right? So you guys are right. We need to be able to adapt the housing model, right? I'm not SD though. I can't do that. I wish I could, right? But just looking at different ways, right? What we want is for people to feel well when either and have a place, because we all know it's the foundation of survival, just have a roof over your head and food in your tummy, right? And just provide them with like sense of security and belonging and connection so that they're not alone, right? Because if not, they'll connect, right, to a substance. It's a normal
So
thing.
how do you go about the connection part? Okay, they get into their own apartment.
Mhm.
So how do you go about connecting with them, suggesting what you can do, and not to overwhelm them?
Absolutely. Yep.
How do you do that?
Well, it's really for them to tell us. So I always go back to what was important prior, right? So what were things that you felt were super, like connections in the past that were super important for you, that you really feel like, you know what, these things I would love to get back to. And connections don't necessarily have to be individuals. It could be activities. It could be a pet. Like, our dogs. If you have a dog, they love you unconditionally. They love you because you have food. Right? And you're like, give me food. Right. So like, and stuff like that. So it's really like, tell me for you, like I always used to say, like, in a perfect world or a place that of just Zen, where would you go? Why would you be volunteering? Would you be doing, I don't know, connecting to an activity that you used to enjoy that you lost touch with because of substance use, right? Or and stuff like that. And tell me right now what you think is the easiest one that you feel you can connect to again and get reconnected, right? Because you all know if you,
So
yep.
what I'm hearing, so we should get them to tell us what they like to do other than use
Absolutely.
drugs or whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good point. Just, you guys know pie charts?
Yes.
The beautiful pie charts. I do pie charts all the time with my clients, and they're good because you can move them around, right? They're slices. Whenever we do the exercise of like, prior to your substance use, I mean, like, look, people are like, I've been using since I'm like 12 years old. Okay, yeah, absolutely. But you were still passionate. You're still passionate in other areas too, right? Things that you wanted or wished or whatever. So we put all the important things in the pies, like your family, it could be your pet. It could be, I don't know, your mom. It could be your group, your AA group, or it could be all these connections. And then I'd be like, what are your core values? Honesty, integrity, the things that you're like, shit, man, because when I started using, I never thought I'd do these things, but it happened, right? Because that wasn't me, right? So put it in there. It's you, it's who you are. And then one of the slices, I'd always say, like, put substance use. And you're like, no. I'm like, come on, we got to put it in. Like, me, it's food. Like, I overeat, right? Like, I'll put food in my slice, right? So we put it in there, and then I do a visual with them, all these beautiful things, and then all of a sudden substance use starts taking over everything, right? It starts squeezing the other slices. Slices are all squeezed, and then all of a sudden, what are we left with? 95% of your obsession is substance use, right? We focus on it. It's in our lives. We're surrounded by it. We're always around it, right? But you never lose your core values. You never lose the things you used to love, right? And be passionate about that you wanted to reconnect. And a lot of times, with my experience, and I've done it myself in my own life, the pie charts applies to all of us. No one here is perfect. If you say you're perfect, I worry for you. All right. But we kind of like, I would look at it and be like, this is what we often do. We take out the substance use because we want to stop, right? We take it out. What's left? A big void. Right? Big emptiness. And it's normal. We feel alone. We feel there's nothing going on. Or we substitute. Oh, you know what? I was drinking a lot. I'll just do some weed, man. Do some cannabis. Well, 95% of your time, you're going to have an issue with cannabis, though. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing it, talking about it, thinking about it all the time. Or I'm going to go to the gym. healthy, right? Yeah, it's healthy. It's not healthy 95% of the time. You know what I mean? So a lot of times we would not focus on the substance use slice. What we'd say is let's start refocusing on the other slices to reconnect to those to make them grow again. The more they grow, the more people reduce, right? Because they're connecting, they're bonding, there's other things going on. And eventually it kind of gets back to either a healthy space of I can reduce and I'm good, or to be in a space of, you know what? I don't obsess about it anymore because I'm reconnecting again and it's good. But Joseph brings up a good point. I always focus on one slice first. I'm like, which one out of these ones is the most important right now? Tell me. Let's set a goal in that area. You okay with that? Yeah, absolutely. Let's focus there. Because what do? We set 35 goals. You achieve 34, but you're still a piece of shit because you didn't do the 35. That's how we all are, right? We're all hard on ourselves. I'm sorry, I swear sometimes. Right? So it's really about one goal, one thing this week, and let's just focus on that. Right? So it's just those little things, right, that we do. Sorry, I'm going off track, but hopefully it's helpful a little bit. Just rediscovering and never tell anybody because we're all the same. You should try something new. Oh, you never went, I don't know, you never done this activity? Do it. You're going to be motivated. I tell people like, people will resist any new activity because you know why? It's not because they don't have any willpower. The brain doesn't have a pathway. So the brain does what? No way, dude. Stop, right? We resist so much. So it's always introducing things that people used to do because the brain has a pathway. It knows about it. I could maybe do that, right? So it's a really different approach. Never introduce something new until their pie is really well balanced, right? It's starting to kind of just feel confident. Their dopamine's flowing again. Woof.
We sort of activate an anxiety feeling for them too.
Good point. Absolutely. Right. And for us, it's the same thing. Like, go to the gym. Oh, if you've never been to the gym, you're going to do everything to resist. So it's like, no, every excuse in the book. What did you use to enjoy? Right. So, okay, you guys ready to go on?
Yep.
I'm going to share one last thing before we go. So, but it's really relevant to harm reduction and it's really relevant to trauma informed. Just to give you guys a really quick update, you guys all know Portugal. So if you look at Portugal, and I know it's probably going to be controversial what I'm about to say, but 2001 had a serious issue related to heroin and opiates. Really bad. High Hep C rates. There was full blown IV. It was so they were like, we put people in jails, which are cages, and they leave and it's not working. Like this incarceration thing isn't working, right? So what they started doing was they were like, you know what? We have to just stop criminalizing people who use drugs, right? And I understand this is going to be controversial because what's happening in BC is that it's not necessarily how it's supposed to work in a way because Portugal did it the right way. They built capacity in treatment. So when people needed it, there's no wait list. There's not like, oh, you got to wait 4 months to get to your rehab, right? They built capacity. So what they did is they decriminalized drugs in 2001. If you get caught with a drug and you're not selling, you're driving a car load, that's selling. Selling is criminal for them, right? Using your substance for your own personal use is just personal use. You are not charged. Your drug is taken away, right? They'll remove it from you. You'll get a fine, which is an inconvenience, but then you meet with a medical team. So like a social worker, a psychiatrist, a physician who presents you services, presents you kind of like all these variety of different options that you want, but the person always has the choice, right? So they're provided with choices and options. So what they do is they just kind of present it. If the person says no thanks, at least they know they're out there. And they always say, come and see us again anytime. If ever you want this, we'll get you to rehab today if you want it. No questions asked, we can get you. They've closed their prisons, and instead of creating prisons, they're creating rehabs. What a concept. You just take your money from one budget and you just put it in the other one, right? So people have quick access. People don't have criminal records. And the government, after like 4 months, people go to treatment and rehab. They want it. They go to rehab. After 4 months, they go to if persons are able to, they go to a return to work program. And the government funds their salary for the year, like half their salary for the year. That's how much money we're saving by not incarcerating people. Right? Because incarceration costs a lot of money. So
much more.
Exactly. And what was happening in Canada and the experiment that they tried here is that, yeah, you can decriminalize it, but there's still wait list. Right? So it's like you have to create capacity in your programs. So when a person says, I'm ready, let's go, man. Let's go. We're going to bring you there and you're engaged, you want it. And plus they have mobile, like opiate agonist treatment programs. They drive around in a van. People go there. And when I went to Portugal, of course, I did the whole like, oh, we're going to go on a tour. So we go on a tour, right? I'm like being a nerd. I'm like, yay. I'm like, my partner, Milan, she's like, don't talk about work, man. I'm like, don't worry about it. I'm good. Of course, first question there. I'm like, so you guys decriminalize drugs? They're like, Milan's like, come on. But I'm talking to all the people there and I'm like, dude, like, guys, tell me more. Like, was it a disaster? Like, what happened? They're like, we would never go back to what it used to be. They said our rates of Hep C's gone down, HIV rates are down, all these things go down. People are seeing like it's not a moral issue, it's a health issue, right? So it's not like you don't have any willpower. No, it's just a matter, it's a health condition. It's a chronic condition that we have to work on. Somebody goes to ER, it's treated like you break an arm, right? You're treated, right? It's just, hey, we're going to provide you with these options. Let's try to get you connected to what you need, right? Does that make sense, guys? It's not perfect, but hey, they try, but I think it might be better than what we're trying. I mean, it doesn't seem to be working, right? So, all right, so let's go. Let's continue. So I also have another video, but I probably won't have enough time to go through it. So I'm just gonna go through this screen here. So this is a quote from. Does somebody have their mic on or something? Because I keep hearing background noise. Sorry, I'm ADHD. But my meds can't take that away. So if you guys don't mind, because I'll hear it all the time, just to mute, and then I'll if you need to chat, just kind of unmute. But feel free to ask questions anytime. So not why the addiction, but why the pain. I like that quote. I think that a lot of times we focus on like, well, like addiction is this, addiction is that. I think it's really more of like it's a response to pain and a response to try to resolve traumatic events in our lives through substances or anything. We all do it, right, in our own capacity. Some of us have healthier skills. So sometimes I love this quote because Gabor Mate is kind of like my guru guy. But I think that I'll go through the biopsychosocial plus model with you guys. I really like that approach because it really focuses on the person as a whole, right, not just one thing. So I would have shown you this. Frig it. I'm going to show you anyways, and I'll speed through my presentation. But this video is really cool, and it really demonstrates the importance of the connection, and a lot of time how it could be just a dog, right? And this was from a person who's unhoused, right? And he has a British accent, so he must be UK. So I'm going to show you guys the video, and you're all going to cry because it has a dog in it. So if you're a dog lover, you'll be like, oh my God, I'm going to cry and break down. So I'm just gonna find it and then I'll get you guys to see it. It's a really, really beautiful video. I love and I enjoy it. We used to show this to clients too, to demonstrate the importance of connection, right? So, okay, let's see, share. I gotta find it now. Okay, right here. And please, someone tell me you can hear it, okay?
This dog saves my life on a daily basis. My name's Andy and this is Bailey. When you're homeless, it can be a pretty unforgiving world. More than anything, it's company. It's having another heartbeat that's on your side. He carries my shopping. He won't allow me to carry anything. He just wants to carry. He just so wants to please all the time. I actually bought him off the street, off a beggar, when he was 4 weeks old. So I give him £12 for him. I took him to the vet the next day, and the vet reckons he was 4 weeks old, and they doped him up with Valium so he wouldn't cry for his mum. So I've had him since then. I had to get him off the drugs. Weaned him. I've had him since, and I haven't touched the Class A drug since. I'm in temporary accommodation at the moment. I lost my way a good few years ago, and I became involved in heavy drugs, and I'd been a heroin and crack addict for about 15 years solidly, in and out of jail. No good to anyone, no good to myself. It was no existence. It was just, wasn't even a life. It's a very lonely place. I've contemplated suicide. I've even gone to the bridge. I was going to throw myself in. I had Bailey with me, and I was thinking, do I go in with him? We all only live once. Who am I to choose when his time's up? That was the lowest I've been.
Yeah.
And I ended up I sat there for a couple of hours, just staring at him, and he just convinced me, because there is communication there. It may not be words, but it's there. He turned me around again. To say he's a lifesaver. When you're stood there, hungry, and no one's noticing you, just walking by as if you don't count, in your mind, it convinces you that you are worthless, that you don't count. But with him, he looks to me for his food, he looks to me for love, he looks to me to play with him. It gives me a role. It might even be a tiny role, but it's a purpose. It's a purpose to get up and behave. If I get arrested and go to prison, I lose my dog. They'll put him in a home and I'll never see him again. They'll rehome him and that'll be that. If I lose my place, I lose my dog, Of course, I look at it from my own point of view as well. I don't want to be homeless. I don't want to be in jail. But it's that extra incentive to do good. I still wake up and I still think about drugs. You just, as an addict, whether it be drink, gambling, it's always there. It's always there. But I take my dog for a walk and it just changes my mindset. And I've met so many people through my dog, artists, interesting people who wouldn't have given me 10 minutes on the road normally. At the end of the day, when you shut the door and turn the light out, he's the one I reach for, you know what I mean? And he's there, he sleeps under the covers with me and all that. He's just always there for me. Honestly, they can cure anything. It's all about love. It's all about love. And through him, I've learned, because I lost all my family through my addiction and that, I've learned how to give love, more importantly, receive it. And he loves me unconditionally, and it's wonderful. I count my blessings every day.
Okay. Let me turn my thing off here. There. Who had some tears? Let's be honest. Safe space, right? Right? Beautiful thing, right? Just the importance of just having that connection. Sometimes can just, and I like what he said when he said that dog has introduced me to people I never would have met before. Right? So it's really like it expands, right? That and it really connects people. So it's a good video, and I show it to people, like I show it to clients and stuff, and they were like, wow, they love it, right? So just to give you guys a heads up, I did put this presentation in the chat, so just an FYI, which has all the video links at the end, all that stuff, even information on anxiety, depression, and videos and stuff. So who here have already heard of the biopsychosocial model? All you nerds in the house, if you haven't, that's all good. You guys are nerds as well. I love you. All right. So the biopsychosocial model. It's not. Oh yeah, that's something that's very difficult when I send it to you guys. By the way, for the, I know it's a weird thing for the presentations. I'm going to try to figure something out. I try to find that way to make it work. So it really just means whenever we meet with a person, we really have to factor in a whole bunch of different things that come into their lives that can interact and interplay together. Who here has already heard that? Oh, addiction's like genetic. Like, all of us, right? Like all of us, we've heard it's genetics. Oh, it's a choice. It's environment. It's, I don't know, it could be just their mental health is not well, right? There's a whole bunch of different factors. Culturally, having had intergenerational trauma, the our indigenous populations, like, you know what I mean? Like the communities, there's that intergenerational trauma that's occurred, right? Like even within certain individuals, right? So, oh, this is French. Did I put the French on? No, I didn't. Okay. I was going to say, I thought I put the French on. But anyways, c'est le modèle biopsychosocial plus. All right. But this is shock. So there's not really a one answer for that. And I'll be honest with you. It's whenever we sit down with a person, we really have to factor in all these things. Yes, there could have been genetics involved, right? Absolutely. Genetics. I know I went to a conference once and it said it counts about 60% of a person's risk of developing a substance use related issue, right? But there's still a 40% of environment, intergenerational trauma. There's other factors that can tag on because someone can come from genetically a family that has a lot of addictions issues that they don't develop an addiction or a substance use concern, right? Just they were lucky. They were in an environment that was very, supportive and caring and connected, right? So whenever we sit down with a person, it's really about how can we factor all these things in, but also how are they going to factor in for the solution? So give you guys just a really tidbit on that is this. So spiritual, that freaks a lot of people out, right? Just that word, because it's associated. Like I'm Catholic. I don't go to church. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm not like a practicing person. Like I'm going to hell anyway. So whatever. So anyway, so it's going to happen. All right. But religion is often associated to spirituality for a lot of our clients. And whenever we would talk about spirituality, we'd always talk about it in the context of balance. How can we create a balance in for your psychological wellness, your social wellness, a balance, like all these different factors? How can we balance it? Because a lot of clients, including ourselves, are all or nothing people. So if you're going to the gym 95% of the time, but you're not focusing on your emotional health, it's useless. You may look good, but you don't behave good. All right. So you're like lacking in other areas. We really want to focus on things that bring balance in our lives. Spirituality could be just an example. Clients would tell this to me all the time. They'd be like, hey, when I go I take a walk on the beach, for me, it's therapeutic. Smelling like the sand, the ocean, going in the woods for a walk. It's just, that's that spiritual connection for me. It's like that soul connection, they'd say, right? It's like, that's for me. And I'd say like, wow. And whenever we would redefine that for them, they'd be like, I don't have to go to church or nothing. I'm like, no, dude, really, don't worry about it. It's really about that connection to you, right? And how do you get that? So I'm a plane nerd. I go watch airplanes. Yeah, I'm a nerd. I love planes because when I was a kid, it's a positive experience for me. So whenever you go through things or life happens, sometimes it's an escape and it's healthy, right? It's just people like planes, like really? I'm like, yeah, I love it, right? But it's the place. So it's really about how can we find balance, and there's not one factor that's the major contributing factor. It's a interplay between all of them. And all of these will help us kind of navigate. So how can we meet these needs and make them feel healthy again overall, right? So I like showing that because it's called the biopsychosocial plus model. We used to stop at biopsychosocial. So cultural, nah, forget about it. We like for the living treatment in Campbellton, we have an indigenous room where they can practice smudging, where they can meet with the elders. The elders can come there and meet with us, right? And meet with the clients, right? They're from the communities around Campbellton, right? So it's nice to have that because that's the cultural practice that they need, right? They've identified with us. So I'm not telling you guys to have an indigenous room, but sometimes having spaces like that, it just creates that safety, right? That cultural safety to be able to have that, and always doing it with the feedback from an elder or someone from the community. They remind me that, Serge, don't screw that up. I'm like, I know I screwed it up. I'm like, damn it, I was just too anxious, but involving them from the get-go, right? So it's really super important. Make sense, guys? Okay, I hope. If you have any questions, stop me. Say, Serge, shut up. I have a question. So for us, I'm going to present to you guys what we do when it comes to approaches to care. So we're going to look at three concepts. One is trauma-informed. The other one's going to be harm reduction, which I call compassionate healthcare. I don't call it harm reduction anymore. I just say it's healthcare done in a compassionate way, right? And we're going to look at some self-care strategies for staff, which is just going to look at it really quickly. And if you're interested, there's documentation I will send to you guys, all right? So trauma-informed practices for us at Addictions and Mental Health Services, the first thing is there's two concepts. There's talking the talk and walking the walk, right? Sometimes having trauma-informed practices embedded in our spaces, it's really just with the understanding that individuals that we see come through our door have likely been, probably 99% of the time, have been exposed to trauma in their lives, and it's directly linked to their substance use or mental health, right? We all know that. That's no secret. The most important factor is how can we reduce the risk of re-traumatization, right? It's how can we create policies and spaces that allows us to continue to have healthy barriers, right? Healthy boundaries, not barriers, boundaries. Barriers, a bad word, boundaries. And spaces where we can have those. And at the same time, understand that everybody that's coming through our door and has a substance use related concern has some exposure to trauma. And how can we reduce the risk of re-traumatizing those individuals? Trauma-informed practices has four concepts: increasing awareness, that could be within ourselves, within the way we do business, or within our community, right? About that link together, but creating that safety and trustworthiness space. So having the ability to connect and build. And we've all worked with individuals that are unhoused. Tough nut to crack, right? It's really difficult. I don't blame them. Our systems have really, really done that much of a great job in creating that trauma-informed practice. I'm speaking for government, right? So how can we start to change that to promote a space of healing, safety, trustworthiness? An example, the Indigenous space. That is exactly a space of safety, trustworthiness, and allowing them to define what it is, not us imposing our beliefs, right? Providing choice and collaboration, but like again, we're talking about connection. It's even the way we present things to individuals. It's like, I don't tell you what to do. I present you with a variety of options, and you take your pick that you feel what works for you, and then we can look at it again, right? If did it work? Did it not work? Let's change the plan. We'll change it to whatever you feel is best for you. But this is the most important part. You guys know I work for Addictions and Mental Health, so we are notorious with looking at people like, man, they're in bad shape. Like our assessments are all mostly deficits. Oh, you're lacking here. You're not good there. Like it's always bad stuff. We actually had to reformulate that and look at more of a strength-based approach in our assessments. People come in our door with strengths and passions and things that they want to reconnect to, right? So sometimes just changing the way we do our assessment process or the way we take a person in or onboard a person into our spaces, it's changing that, right? And looking at more of like, okay, let's look at the strengths. We all have stuff we got to work on, but it's more of a strength base. Those are four key concepts, right? For trauma informed. We also can, for our services, we also are trying to be more gender informed, culturally informed, and being aware of we all know that for staff and for all of you in the room, if you're a staff working a shelter, manager, whatever, secondary traumatic stress and vicarious trauma, or like I call it, when staff goes to debrief, they slime each other. Did you guys ever hear about sliming? You're like, I just heard this horrific story. Hi, you have a minute for me? Yeah, what do you want to talk about? Plow. You just lay right into them. They're traumatized by the story. And then all of a sudden they're spreading the trauma all around because the stories are horrific or the things we see, right? It's how can we create a space where we are able to have low impact debriefing, right? A space of safety, a space of awareness, a space of I am consenting, I know what's coming, and I can say to you, yeah, absolutely, I'm ready for this. Tell me what's going on, right? Because we all have bad days and it's okay. That makes sense, guys? So that's trauma informed for us, even for our own staff, right? So a lot of stuff we can implement for ourselves. Being trauma informed is using neutral language. Like we're saying, like tough talk. So it's okay. You guys might think I'm a little bit of a loose cannon. You guys remember the show Intervention? So super low success rates. What is the one thing that they do when the person walks into the room? First, it's a surprise. Surprise! It's like, what was going on, right? 2, they sit down, they just slime that person in the middle, right? Which, we've all done things that we're like, I'm not proud of, right? I mean, they already know what they did. They don't need to be reminded, right? And then they say, you're going to rehab, and if you don't, you'll never see me again. Well, I will completely cut you off from my life, which I get. Some of them, it's bad stuff. I had a member of my family which had some serious issues, right? It's tough. It's not easy, right? And then, so right there, remember the whole video about connection? We are threatening to disconnect them from everything, which is what's going to save them, and throw them on a plane and go to Arizona, because that's going to fix you, right? So if we threaten these things, there's ways we can do it to keep our boundaries, to say, hey, you know what? I love you, man. I just don't love what's going on with you. Okay. And moving forward, we're going to stay connected, but I need to put healthy boundaries, right? I just need to really work through this with you. I will completely support you. If you want to go to the grocery store, I will drive you there. I'll get this shit done with you. I can do this and that. I ain't driving you to a dealer's place, man, because I love you and I want to stay connected to you. So anytime you can connect with me when you need that, we can do this and this, and you define it, but they're still connected. Do you guys see the difference? It's not like I will completely cut the cord and you're done, because then that increases the risk of dying, right? So because they're disconnected, they'll use more. They use more, they're more at risk of death, right? So it's really more of a focus on that, right? There's tough talk, but tough talk, I've never seen it work. It could work with some people. Anyways, but it's more focused on solutions. Like I was telling you guys, there's no power and control. Power and control is shared amongst each other. Just that collaboration between the person and you. It's not I am in a position of power, because right away there's that like imbalance, and that creates resistance, right? It's like, hey, we're just here together, you and I. We're just going to try to brainstorm this thing, what's going on, and let's just work together, right? So that's being trauma informed, right? Not informed is on the other side. And language. So using this language, which comes from CCSA, right? So the Canadian Center for Substance Use created a campaign on language and the importance of it. Can you guys still see the screen of language? You can see it, right? Okay. Super important. It all depends by the person too. So give you guys an example. Who here has already used the word addict, alcoholic, and gambler? I think we all did, no? I've done it. Guilty as charged. I've done it before. The way we've changed our services is we allow the person the opportunity to be able to identify to what they feel brings them up. I'll explain to you guys what I mean by that. We've all grown up in families with people who have substance use issues. No one here is perfect. If you say you have a perfect family, you're full of shit. I love you. It's like, you're the ones I worry about. I had a perfect family. I am worried for you. You're like completely not on planet Earth, right? We've all had a family member, and growing up, we were always bombarded by society telling us that addicts and alcoholics are no good, they're bums, or this, right? That's what society tells us constantly. They don't want help. They want to live on the streets forever, right? Like all this stuff that's going on, and and this and that. So it ingrains in us. Our past life experiences are inside of us. All of a sudden, you go to treatment because you want to get help one day, and you say, I'm an addict. Right away, you will live with the association that was given to you in your value systems growing up. So if for you it was a bum, no good, a liar, a cheat, you're going to say that about yourself. I am that, right? And clients are like, I feel like a piece of garbage whenever I label myself at that. I'm like, you're living your value systems. It's normal. We've all been through it, right? So I'd always tell them, like, does it bring you up or down? Because when you feel like garbage and you feel shitty about yourself and you feel like this, what's the first thing you want to do? I want to go shoot heroin up. Yeah. You're feeling a lot of emotions, right? Absolutely. So I'd be like, you know what? Here are other options. You're a person who's experiencing some substance use concerns right now. You don't have to label yourself as an addict. You don't have to you're a person who's having issues related to alcohol right now. You just want to work on it. Person first language. Because would you guys agree? Remember the pie? There's much more to these people than just a behavior. Do people walk around with shirts? Hi, I'm a diabetic. Right? You're like, hey, like I'm a diabetic. Like, no, we don't do that. We don't label people. So we want to start demystifying that. However, if a client tells me, Serge, for me, it doesn't bring shame. It brings accountability. It's good for me. It's a positive thing. I'm like, use it. See the difference? I'm providing them with choices. There's other alternatives, right? We want them to live a positive experience when it comes to the change, right? So I always use person first language. So that's something that we don't use. Like we don't use like, oh, they're addicts and they're this. We provide them with the options, and we let them decide. So we've already used the word clean. What does clean mean? It means you're dirty. For some people, that's negative. So, some people are just saying, hey, I'm substance free right now. Awesome, man. That's cool. That's great. Perfect, right? Never use labels that bring you down, right? So just changing your language reduces harm. It's a harm reduction. I'm sorry. You guys are like, damn it. I was going to be on the low end, but damn you, Serge. Like, you got an Narcan kit? Yeah, you're good. You wore your seatbelt this morning, go to work? Yeah, that's harm reduction. Right? It's like, oh, what? Like, yeah, you have a choice to wear a seatbelt or not. If you want to have fun in the car, go right ahead. It's harm reduction, right? So really all about just changing that narrative and using person first language. We've all had relapse. Relapse can be very negative for individuals that we see. I don't use that word. I say, hey, we just had a recurrence. Could be just a little slip, a little setback, because if for them using relapse allows them to go on a bender for 3 months, I want to avoid the bender. I want to use this as a learning opportunity. You guys know what I mean? This is an opportunity to learn something. And if you use the word relapse and it's negative for you, hey, maybe it's just, I had a little setback, a little bit of a recurrence, right? I'm just using substance, but I want to get back on my change plan, right? So always want to refocus on that. Want to change the experience that they're having to the word. Craving. You guys. I want to do a random poll. What's your all-time favorite food? Joseph's like, yeah, I wanted to know. What's your all-time favorite food? I'll tell you mine after. Go.
Chocolate.
Oh, yeah. Chocolate. Somebody else in the room, too. Craft dinner. My daughter would love you. Popcorn, extra butter, yes. What else? Chocolate. KD. Typing. Yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. Berries of current goes absolute. Smoked salmon pasta. Cheese, that's a good one. I like peanut butter. Peanut butter is the food of the gods for me. All right, not in a spiritual way. Bacon, yeah, chocolate covered bacon. Right? I would do that same experiment with our client. Lasagna, yes. Pizza, yeah. Those are all good. Chinese food, donairs, thank you. All the wonderful things. Deep fried bacon, yes. I would do that same experiment during our managing the urges sessions with our clients. I'd be like, what's your favorite food? That's the first thing I'd ask them. They'd be like, all the wonderful things you guys have all said. Much cheaper. Thank you. Good one, V. So they'd all laugh. We all smile. We're all triggered. We're all craving. We're all like, yay. And then they'd be like, why are you asking us about food? Because I'm like, because it's normal. Guys, it's Rocky Road ice cream. It's a perfectly normal experience to experience an urge for something. It's the first substance we were introduced to was food, right? Because a lot of us that use substances, we think it's not normal when I still have cravings or urges later on in my change journey, right? But it's a normal thing, right? It's a perfectly normal thing. So we would normalize it, but we would change the name to I'm having a moment. Because craving, if the people we work with say that to their family members are going to lose it. Oh, here we go again. They're using again. They're going to use again. It's going to be a relapse. And then it's going to create situations of stress and conflict and everything, all the reasons why, right? It's going to create that. So a lot of times we would say there's an alternative that we're presenting to you. Use the word that fits your change journey would be, I'm having a moment. You'd be like, oh, well, it's less powerful. I'm like, absolutely. A moment can be anything, right? It's more general, but you're accepting of it, and it's just toning down the volume a little bit, right? You're just turning it down a little bit, right? So that's wording that we use, right? Overdose is stigmatizing word. A lot of us don't know that. It was all news to me. So overdose is a stigmatizing word because it's related to like stigmatizing towards the population who use opiates, and at the same time, we're substance users. At the same time, we don't say alcohol overdose, do we? No, alcohol poisoning. Nobody intentionally uses, usually most of the time, a substance with the goal of experiencing it. Their goal is to escape the pain, right? So it's really just redefining a language. We have to reduce some of those stigmas. And just to give you guys a little tidbit here again, did you know, if you guys know Gabor Mate, he'll talk about this. Did you know that opiate addiction, and which is related a lot to alcohol addiction because they're both painkillers, right? Starts from 0 to 2 years old. People are like, what? I can see people like, what? What do you mean? Opiate addiction is part of the brain development of the child from 0 to 2, a little bit of 3 years old. The most important part to the brain development is the bonding and love drug is in our brain. If you ask our clients who have opiate addictions or even alcohol, how was your family life when you were a kid? Would you say it was sunshine and lollipops and there was a lot of connection with mom and dad and really involved with me a lot and there was a lot of that going on? Who here has kids? You have kids? 0 to 2, they're funny, they're goofy, they fall all over the place or whatever. But when they bond and connect to you and they look at you, there's that smile. There's no teeth, but it's cute anyways, right? You're like, you're cute, right? But there's that bond connection with the parent. Present, consistent, there, in the moment. The brain's like, yes, 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 yes. It starts producing these synapses of loving connection, bonding, bonding, bonding. Individuals who don't have that are not even aware of it. If you were in families that were dysfunctional, which a lot of us were, we're not perfect families, right? But you're probably maybe more at risk, right? If I was giving you opiates, you may be like, oh, I like this too much. Other people are like, I have an opiate. I'm like, I feel like shit. I feel sick. Your brain's good, all right? So, and then all of a sudden, they don't even know that these synapses didn't have a lot of that capacity. So they don't have a lot of that love drug in their brain or like that dopamine, all these wonderful things in your brain. And then all of a sudden, 30 years old, you break a fingernail, you go to ER. What do they give you at ER? Morphine. Got in a car accident, never had a drug problem before. Next thing you know, here's morphine. When somebody uses opiates, what's the first thing they say from their first time they used? It was a warm, loving blanket. And the brain says, where were you all my life? I can get this through a pill. I can get this through an injection. Thank you. Then we go on the search of it all the time because it's powerful, that loving connection, right? So a lot of times people ask me that. I'm like, we don't even know we're susceptible because of biological factors, but some of us are, right? So it's not their fault. Didn't have a choice from 0 to 2 years old. Hey, I love to have a loving dad or mom or whoever, right? Partners, doesn't matter. We don't have access, right? So having that awareness to say like, hey, it's not their fault, right? But you know what cures opiate addiction? Loving connection. We provide Suboxone, and first of all, our first line of defense is Suboxone, right? Second line, Sublocade. Third line, we go methadone. Methadone is always our last one now. And the reason why we don't detox people, I'll explain to you guys straightforward. Alcohol addiction is very, very, very dangerous with benzos and withdrawals, right? They can really go into seizures, DTs, so that's very, very risky. Opiate addiction, we will take them, but we will recommend we put them on Suboxone. We'd be like, we can do the induction of Suboxone in our unit, and you'll be part of our program. But if people want to stop cold turkey, then we train their loved ones in Narcan because it's got to happen. they're going to have a poisoning. Guaranteed. Most people, not everybody, will have a risky situation where they use the same dose they did prior to being admitted after they're let discharge and they die. We've all experienced it with a lot of our clients, right? And that's why best practice is let's try to get them on Suboxone. We can stabilize them. We can work with them with social workers and get counseling. We have a nursing team. Let's work. Some people are on it forever. That's okay. They're not going to withdrawals anymore. They're stabilized on their dose of Suboxone, which is the pill form, not the drink there. I love Sublocade because you don't have to go to the pharmacy every day. You get an injection once a month. You can work. You can go. You don't have to go to the pharmacy and get like, here, you've been a bad boy today, huh? Right? Like, we give the injection. You're good for the month. If you need counseling, come and see us. We're there for you, right? So if we can create an environment to stabilize them, then we can work on building their love connections in their brain again. And Gabor Mate says that. He says, to cure, the brain can change. Surround people with loving connection if you want them to get off of opiate addictions. Surround them with community, social recovery, connections, rebuilding those things, right? Hopefully that makes sense. If you want free training, this is a beautiful training. It's called the Brain Story Certification. It's good for all staff. It's to understand better substance use, mental health concerns. But it goes back to what I was telling you guys about the opiate addiction. It goes back to adverse childhood experiences and how that has an impact on a person's ability to manage stress and situations in their lives later on, or putting them more at risk of having substance use and mental health concerns. This comes from Alberta, believe it or not, Alberta, right? So they mandated their staff at probation, social development, addictions and mental health, ER, like government agencies. They mandated their staff to all take this, who have high contact pressure points with like individuals who have substance use and mental health concerns, to have this training so that they all got the same understanding of how this is related to the person and how substance use and mental health concerns happen. Science, right? It's all about brain, adverse childhood experiences, how that has an impact, and that everybody's using the same language. If you've worked with us, you guys know we are discombobulated and not connected at all, and no one's talking, but we love each other. But we're all using different languages and different interpretation of what substance use concerns are and where mental health concerns come from. So you know what that does to a person who's trying to recover? It slows their journey down because everybody's giving different messages to them. It's a choice. You can choose better. Oh no, it's willpower. Oh no, it's brain power. Oh no, it's a disease. Like all these things, everybody's using different terminology. That confuses the person. And the person's like, what the hell am I? Right? To change that, they mandated all their staff to do it so everybody has the same understanding and the same lingo, right? And it's science. I always say this. Anybody can have an opinion, yes. That's great. It doesn't make it right, right? It doesn't make it science-based, evidence-informed, right? I mean, there's things that I used to do that I'm like, that was evidence-informed. And they're like, no, sorry, it's not. Ah, shit. Change your approach, right? I try to always change it. So that's super cool. It's 30 hours for staff can do it. Anybody can do it. It's cool. It's long. It's bilingual, but it's long. But for overnight staff, sometimes it's good, right? So anybody can take this. You can go online, just put Brain Story Certification, sign up, and you can start the course. A lot of videos, interactive stuff. This comes from Horizon. So I used to work with Horizon Health in Moncton. So this is called a comfort plan. So we use this in our intensive day treatment program, IDT. So IDT is a 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks program. It's like a day rehab. They do their programming during the day and they go home at night, right? So for some people, that's what they can do, right? Some people, not everybody needs a rehab. Some people can do it this way. They can change, and that's great. So if you've worked in psychiatry or dealt with ER psychiatry detoxes, you guys have already heard like we discharge people against medical advice or whatever. That famous term, like they were non-compliant. Non-compliant, right? You know what that was? That was us not like not using prevention. We have clients do this because it tells us, one, what triggers them. First of all, how do you want to be identified? Male, female staff, some of them are triggered either or. We need to know. So if like for us as staff, so is there a concern? Is there a history of trauma? So we need to know, because if someone's intervening and that triggers them, it's not going to help the situation. We try to adapt our intervention, right? It tells us what triggers them. So we know. We can sometimes reduce some of those triggers in our work environments, because a lot of them are triggered by the same things. Sensory stuff. We know how they behave when they're triggered, but we also know what works for them when they are, and they're starting to be in distress, right? So I don't call triggers. They call them irritants for people, right? So irritants. So that's super important. A lot of times the behaviors change days before there's a blow up. We're never able to kind of read the room, right? Because we're busy. You guys, like, I understand you've got a lot of things going on, but sometimes if we can get clients to do this, you can use this, adapt it, do whatever you want with it. Just make sure like to adapt it to your liking, but you get to know them better, and you can, whenever at the end, like you can intervene earlier and be like, hey, I noticed that, like, remember we filled out that comfort plan? You were telling me about like, whenever you're irritated by certain things, this comes out, you're tense all the time or whatever. Remember the tools that you identified that work for you the best to kind of chill you out? Yes. Which one do you want right now? I'm going to provide it to you. It could be just, I need to put some music on, sit in a room, it's dark, cool. Yes. Let's do that right now. Is that what you feel will help you? Yes. Let's do that. Right? So you have the tools readily available for them. A lot of stuff that our dollar store stuff we will provide to our clients, and when we give it to them, we're like, keep it. Like, some people, it's sensory stuff. They like to have squishy toys. You guys know the fidgets? One of those. If you give me a fidget, if you give me a fidget, you're going to hate your life because I'm ADHD. All right. You're going to be like, oh, God, get it away from him. I did group with people with substance use concerns. A lot of them are ADHD. They're like, dude. Like everybody was doing the fidget thing, so we had to kind of get rid of it, right? We would put other tools on the table. But it's really just an opportunity for them to get back to a zone of tolerance. So people, when it comes to trauma, either are hyper aroused, which are super excited, like, fight, flight, like get it the hell out. They're really anxious. Or people are hypo. I'm numb to the world. I'm dead. I feel nothing inside. One needs tools to be able to turn the volume up, which is hypo. And if you're hyper, you need to chill. Like if you're like Serge, I need to chill, right? I need tools to calm me, to bring me back to a nice, healthy space, right? And everybody's window of tolerance is different because everybody has different life experiences. So some of them is bigger, some of them is smaller. So they need more higher level of interventions, right? It's a good tool to use. Because you're not just saying, oh, we didn't know. Yeah, we know now how these people, like this individual, this is the irritants, this is how they're behaving, but this is what works for them. Remember, trauma informed? Here are the options. Let me help you, right? Within your own agencies, right? So this is some of the tools. So I like that. It's called a comfort plan, just comforting, right? So it's stuff like that.
Yeah, Serge, I really like this tool. How can we get a copy, or is it possible to get a copy of that? Because I think this is the tool that I'm looking for, because I'm training my staff on what I call pre-escalation, is looking for the antecedents, but being able to listen to the person, get to know them better, so that we can, observe the antecedents before they actually get into a state where they'll be escalated, right? And so that tool is actually the missing piece for me. And I'm wondering if, it would be great to have.
I will send it to you guys if you guys are okay with that. Just do me a favor. You never got it from me. Oh, so we're recording. 2. Okay. Always put in like adapted from Horizon, and just kind of like, I'll give you the contact person and be like, hey, we've adapted it. It's a draft format. It's different than yours, but adapted to your liking. Take the Horizon logo out, take that stuff out, but create it to your own liking.
That's perfect. Thank you.
No worries. High five. Anything you can do to help you guys, right? Little tools. Comfort baskets. We have those in all of our office spaces. I will share the tools, Susan. So we have the comfort baskets in all of our offices now. at 81 Albert Street when I worked there. We all got trained on it. Our OTs trained us. If ever you need training in your zone, maybe OTs can help you. But comfort baskets are good because they provide tools to individuals within your office space. You can clean it, sanitize it, or you can just give it to them because a lot of it's like dollar store stuff. It's like when a client tells me like, "Hey man, can I keep the this fidget thing?" I'm like, "Absolutely. You want to keep it? Transferable skill." I'm like, this is a awesome thing. It helps them, right? So we have those in our offices, and that's another trauma-informed practice, is to have it there because it helps them either go up and down. And this is just an explanation, guys, of hyper-aroused, hypo-aroused, and like dysregulation, frustrations. It kind of shows symptoms, and that the window of tolerance for everybody can be different depending on your life experiences, right? But the goal for either or is we've got to help individuals regulate again and get within their zone of tolerance. So just to give you guys an example, you cannot do counseling with someone who's dysregulated. Contrary to belief, like, oh yeah, put a psychologist in there. Let's start doing some therapy when they're dysregulated. They can't hear you. Who here has already been dysregulated? I just did my taxes. I was dysregulated. Like, what the hell, man? Like, so like, it's really all about how can we bring them back. Doesn't mean therapy. It's just for that session, bring them back to a nice zone of tolerance, right? With the tools within our spaces. It could be just a room to chill. Like it could be at IDT, we have a sensory room. They go into a room, they can relax. They have all these variety of different sensory stuff. So it's really up to everybody. So now I'm going to jump in for the last part to integrating trauma-informed and harm reduction, right? They actually overlap. So if you want to use another word for harm reduction within your agencies, use trauma-informed practice. If you don't want it to be polarizing, right? So if you don't want to fight with people and be like, you got to see it my way. This is the way I see it, guys. It's a continuum, and you can fit wherever you want, right? In trauma-informed practices, if you use a language that really not good for clients, you're probably creating harm. That's not trauma-informed, right? So it's really about how can we reevaluate ourselves and look at our practices, and are we using an intake form or a form when they come in that's using good language, right? It's being considerate, it's compassionate. Just little changes can do that stuff. But like when Joseph, you brought up like safe consumption sites are on the continuum, where people can have a space where they can use safely with a nursing staff there and medical staff, and it could be counselors or whoever in that space, right? That's the ideal space for a safe consumption site. To, hey, you know what? We have CPR. We're trained first aid. That's harm reduction. Like you're potentially reducing some risks, right? You're able to deal with some of the things. So it's really to everybody's liking. I don't believe in imposing anybody anything, because then people's like, yeah, that's what we want. We do it, man. Like high five. Like seriously. But I always use just the it's not safe consumption. I always use just trauma-informed. How can we be more trauma-informed and considerate and compassion, right, with the individuals? Do you guys, anybody here from Moncton? Where are my Moncton peeps? Come on, man. Vraiment? Where's Mark? I was like, but okay.
Pick me, Mark.
Sharon, okay, all right. Who here remembers, if you're from Moncton, we used to have a guy called Eddie. You know what they used to call him? Eddie the Bum. He was the only person in town who was unhoused. You know what Eddie struggled with? Eddie struggled with alcohol use disorder. Very smart, intelligent man, would never hurt a fly, caring soul, right? Found a wallet full of money, he would give it to the RSMP. Please have that returned to them. Not one penny taken, right? Very sensitive, good man, passed away of alcohol use disorder. But you know what they used to do to him in the wintertime so that he wouldn't freeze to death? They used to have to put him in jail. Is that trauma-informed? Just because, Eddie, you took a granola bar, right, from the store. Yes, we have to put you in jail. So they saved his life. It was reducing harm, but you're putting him in an environment that's very traumatic. right? Would you guys agree? Prisons are very, very, very traumatic, right? I worked at Dorchester Pen. There was no healing going on up there, though. All right, it was Dorchester Pen. So
we have another one as well.
Yeah,
here in Markham. Yeah.
absolutely. So,
Yeah.
did you guys ever hear of a managed alcohol program? Those are locations where people are housed. So in Ottawa, they have one. They have some all over the country. People are housed. They are staffed by healthcare professionals, right, in those locations, and they provide individuals who have high alcohol use disorders, who are constantly involved with the police, having conflict, ER, blah blah blah. They provide them with hourly doses of alcohol, so they don't go in withdrawals, and they're not super highly intoxicated. But they're housed, and some of them have responsibilities within those housing units. You got to do the laundry. Everybody kind of plays a role, right? But they're not on the streets. They're not getting in fights with the cops. They are not in ERs. They're not in those locations. We are providing them with a space to live and hourly doses of alcohol. That is harm reduction.
What is that called again, Serge?
It's a managed alcohol program, a MAP. So housing first, we'll work with you afterwards, but we'll get you connected. Doctors are there. There's nursing staff. Like they have healthcare stuff. It's taken care of there. And it's called the Pour. So if you ever go online, you could put the Pour, Pour, like a pour pouring a drink, and you'll see in Ottawa what they do. It's really like, it's amazing. And I'll be honest with you guys, because Eddie probably could have benefited from a program like that. You know, instead of throwing him in jail, maybe we could have given him a place to stay and give him doses of alcohol, right? That are controlled, and he's not going in DTs, right? So it's an option, right? I would love for Eddie to have been sober, but who am I, right? I would have loved to seen Eddie just have a nice quality of life. To be honest with you guys, I mean, I think a lot of our clients could experience that, right? So that's for that. So it's really overlapping. And I love this thing, the substance use spectrum, we call it. It's really it just came out from Health Canada. And really what it says is this: change means different things for different people, but a person can move back and forth from that substance use spectrum, and depending on what's going on in their lives. And it's just for us to help navigate them and try to reduce the risks associated with the higher things, right? So like addiction, substance use disorder, we try to reduce the risks of them when there's substance use. And that harm reduction is part of the continuum for treating substance use. It's the goal. We always want people to be substance free and living a good quality of life. But until then, we are here for you, and we will help you in our capacity that we can, right? We can try to just get you connected, build the trust again, and eventually, hopefully, get you to where you want to be in the long run, right? So that's just a slide. I like that slide. And I concluded this for you guys, the drug wheel. I love the drug wheel. It's a good wheel. It really explains all the different categories of substances, as well as some of the symptoms that they experience when they're using the substance, which sometimes can be abuse and stuff like that. So really, it's just it's a good thing. I'm going to include it in my mail out of stuff. So I'll include it for you guys, but you can go to the website and you can just download the copies on your own. So that it's good to know, right? So here I go. I'm going to jump into this, and it really overlaps, right? So I don't call it harm reduction anymore. I call it just compassionate care, like compassionate health care, or compassionate care within our work environments. So the importance with harm reduction, these are just key concepts of it, and I like just to go through them really quickly. The focus it's not on abstinence. It's really on an individual's quality of life and how to improve it. What is harmful for me may be exciting for another person. If you want to skydive, good for you. I will not skydive with you. For me, that's harmful, right? So it's really having that understanding that sometimes we think that, oh, they're just using because, no, it might be exciting for them. It might be a temporary escape from memories or traumatic events, right? So it's an answer to a symptom, right? So it's just kind of like changing our narrative. And it's about offering non-coercive services where abstinence is not a precondition to access. So not all of you may like me when I say this. A lot of people are unhoused are because the preset condition is you need to be abstinent. So us, health, and addictions and mental health need to be able to create teams for individuals to sustain their housing and support them, even if they're still using. You guys remember At Home Chez Soi? That project at home? That was what it was all about. We should have At Home Chez Soi again. That morphed into the FACT team for addictions and mental health, but they don't do housing. At Home Chez Soi was housing first, then we did the wraparound services, right? And then we supported them. Some people used, some people got, substance free. That's great. But what was the first condition? House. We're going to get you to a space where you can feel like you feel comfortable. It might be with other people, but at least you're not alone, or you want to be alone. Great. We can help you with that. Like, you know what I mean? Matching them to the right level of housing, and then do the wraparound services. Right. So housing is a, what do you call those things? I should know that there. One of the first thing is a, what do you call it? Social determinant of health. Right? Is that the first thing? So how can we not have that condition? You need to be substance free to have housing. Okay, that's not going to work for a lot of people. So, but how can we ensure that if you're still using, it's not a shit show, and you're supported by a clinical team, and then we can navigate you afterwards with the support of you guys, like your case managers, and we can navigate them, build the trust, and get them to where they need to go, where they want to go. Right? So it's really, how can we work on that, right? Because you remember I talked to you guys about that sensory issue. A lot of people are sensitive to light, touch, sounds, and all these stuff. We throw them in apartments and like, look, it's nice, isn't it? Yeah. Anybody doing an evaluation on those sensory issues? Nope. Oh, by the way, that really triggers him. That's an irritant. Oh, by the way, they're back in their shelter. It's like, I love OTs. We really need a lot to build on them so that when we house a person, we can make sure it's a comfortable space for them, right? With the capacity that we can, right? So, like I was telling you guys, the first concept is to do no harm, using language that it's different, it's person-centered, person-centric, strength-focused, sensitive treatment, compassionate care, and being flexible. That's those key concepts, and without judgment. We all would love substance free. It's not reality, but how can we work with these individuals and just kind of, we may have a policy that doesn't align with this, that's fine. But if it happens, how can we make sure that it's compassionate, right, towards them? Give you guys an example. Our live-in treatment programs, so like live-in treatment or concurrent disorder live-in treatment are the rehabs. Campbellton, St. John, right? Ridgewood Addiction Services, Campbellton. Well, Campbellton has 18 beds. St. John has 16 beds now. We just upped our game a little bit. Well, if there's an incident of substance use, we don't discharge them. And they're free to go. Like in the evenings, like go, man. Go out in town, man. Go try your skills, right? When somebody's on a unit in the hospital and they're diabetic and they eat a chocolate bar, do we say, get the hell out of the hospital? If you're diabetic, you're like, damn you. All right, sorry. But I mean, do we do that? No. Oh, okay. Don't forget. Just be safe. Don't worry about it. We're going to monitor your sugar, your blood levels. We're going to make sure you're okay, that you're not going to go and whatever. So let's try to do things differently as well with us. So our programs, we don't discharge. We may have a week of reevaluating their treatment plan when it comes. They may not leave the grounds because we're not revoking their passes. They're not children. All right, we're gonna work on 5 days of restabilization, and then they can go back out. Right? If the client's like, yeah, I want to restabilize. Okay, let's do this. Don't worry about it. You're with us in the evenings. We're gonna plan your treatment plan with you, but we're not gonna discharge you. If you're selling drugs in our unit, yeah, we're gonna discharge you. That's a whole different ball game. But if you're like, I use a substance, I'm so sorry. Don't worry about it. We're not discharging you. This is a learning opportunity. Right? So notice the difference, right? So it's keeping them engaged and connected, right? So that's a big change for us. Before it was like abstinence only. Like that's not reality, right? So, and like I was telling you guys, what's harmful for me may not be harmful for other people. Just as an FYI, who here remembers when you were kids, you had no seatbelts in your car? Thanks. The only seatbelt was our parent doing this. Make sure you whoa, right? Remember that? You guys remember that? Anyways, and wearing seatbelts is harm reduction because you have a choice not to wear it or not. When you ride your bike, you don't have to wear your helmet if you don't want to, right? But you wear your helmet because it's reducing harm. It reduces the risks, right? So we want to teach that same approach. I noticed there's a hand up. Who is it? Anybody have a question? I think it might be oh, Ron. Can't hear you, Ron, if you're talking. Sorry, Ron. Type it in though if you have a question, and if anybody can help you with the chat, that's great because I cannot multitask. Okay, we're gonna wrap up. So harm is relative. It's different for everybody. We just want to apply it in other things in our lives. This is an intervention tool I used to use with individuals because these are a variety of different areas in our lives. So when somebody comes into our office space, I always tell the staff, I would tell the staff, don't think you know what's harmful for them. Ask them what's harmful for them and where. Because for me, Ivy used, yeah, your arm, man, it's all messed up. The guy doesn't give a shit. Why are you focusing on that? He's like, I don't care. Okay, cool. But he's like, what I care about in my substance use is that I can't talk to my kid right now. That's where it's harmful for them, right? So my intervention was always there. Never on, yeah, well, what about your arm, man? The guy doesn't care, right? So right away, if you do that, you're going to get this, right? Friction, friction, friction. So you ever see the Chinese torture things or whatever they call those things, the little sticks you put the Chinese toys, the more you resist, the more difficult it is, right? So it just doesn't work. So always trying to identify where they're concerned, not where you think you are concerned. Does that make sense, guys? That's being trauma informed, right? I'm going really quick. Did you know that alcohol is the most dangerous drug out there? Ha ha, bummer. Yeah. People always say like, oh yeah, man. Crystal meth and opiates, you'll hear a lot about it, right? It's in the news a lot, but actually alcohol kills a lot more people than any of those substances. One, two, it's socially normal, right? And there's a lot more harm to society because nobody here makes the best decisions when they're drinking. If you say so, like, I'm like, come on, man, right? Did you guys know that the lowest rate of alcoholism in the world is in Italy? Surprise! Write that one down, guys. You know why? They're socialized to alcohol at a very young age. Around probably 11, 12 years old, but they don't drink like us. How'd you learn how to drink? I'm sure, was it civilized? Was it in public with people? It was at a party with people, and you're hiding from who? Your parents, because you don't want them to find out, and everybody's driving and drinking, and everybody's just hiding. It's shame-based, right? In Italy, you have a small glass of wine at your supper. You don't down the barbarian or the hermits. Like, yeah, look at me, right? Like, we learn to overuse alcohol. So Italy has a different policy. It's you respect it. You're socialized differently, right? So that's always interesting to know. So I always put it in there because a lot of people always say it's crystal meth. Yes, absolutely. It's terrifying because people are not themselves when they're using methamphetamines, right? But it's just like the most harm scores is alcohol. So that's something we need to talk about. And by the way, I got 10 minutes left and I'm going to wrap up soon. When cannabis was legalized, we didn't see a huge increase in our psychiatric rates or stuff like that. Like, people are like, oh, people are going to be in psychiatry. Like, they're all going to go through psychosis or, yeah. People who have risk factors prior, yes, absolutely. Cannabis can be an irritant that can bring those symptoms, right? A lot of people are in psychiatry right now that overuse alcohol. So why was it okay then? But now with cannabis, like, oh my God, it's going to be reefer madness. Everybody's going to be in psychiatry. But we really didn't see that spike. You know, so we didn't see that, right? So it's all about public perception, right? So society tells that a lot. So for us right now, would you guys agree? Biggest barriers, society, just trauma informed overall. Biggest barriers, society, How can we work on social recovery? How can we advocate for people that we see? How can we change our language? How can we, within ourselves, how can we talk about with our communities about integrating individuals? They're human beings. How can we connect, right? It's really seeing it in that sense and making it more like, like no one is born wanting this, right? So some examples of harm reduction, decriminalization, that's not legalization, that's just decriminalize. Needle exchange programs, wearing seatbelts, safe consumption sites, opiate replacement treatment. We now offer medication for alcohol use, right? So if you guys know Dr. Logan, she works at the opiate agonist clinic, right? So Dr. Logan, she's like all over the place. I'm like, how do you do this? Anyways, but we have medication now that can help individuals reduce their alcohol use. It doesn't mean that they can want to stop, but it means that if they reduce, they're healthier. If they don't want to stop, I'm okay with that. If you're using less, high five, right? Less is best. That's what we always say for those programs. That program is with Dr. Logan's clinic. So like the opiate agonist, we are changing our clinics to addictions medicine services clinics because we're hopeful eventually we're going to have stimulant replacement therapy. Like it's not been researched enough yet, but they're still looking into it. But eventually that's what we want to start offering, right? You know why they're using stimulants? Because they're all ADHD guys. Guess what my Vyvanse is? It's a stimulant. I'm taking amphetamines, controlled dose, right? So sometimes when we can provide them the medication that they need in a controlled manner with not all the toxic crap that's in meth. Hey, you want lighter fluid? Sure. Like, take whatever. We can reduce the risk and we can control the dose. They may still use some methamphetamines, but they will reduce, which is better, right? And then we can work with them and keep connections with them, right? So that's another thing we're trying to work on. Drug testing kits. I used to work with youth programs. Drug testing kits are good. They're going to use E. Back in the day, it was big, E, right? Ecstasy. That was a big thing. Everybody's using E. Test it. I know you're safe. I know you're going to use. Test it. So I know you're not going to die from liver failure or renal failure, please. Okay, so it's reducing. It's accepting that they're going to use. Did you guys know there's a hospital in Alberta, of all places, again, that has a safe injection site in their hospital? It's staffed by nurses and doctors and social workers. So whenever they go there, they bring all like the syringes and everything that they've used. They give them. They get a whole bunch of new ones. They don't have. So it's like an exchange, and they're allowed to use on site, monitored by health staff. And the day they say, you know what, I'm sick and tired of this bullshit, I really want to get on Suboxone, we got you, man. We're going to start this with you. We're here on your journey, right? So we know that they're with us and they're connected with us, right? I don't think we've got any of that stuff in our ERs, right, guys? I'm hopeful that we can eventually get to a space where people can at least be referred to our programs when they go to ER, right? So like they can be seen as human beings and be sent to our programs at least, right? And started, right? So we're working on it. This part here is the last part. So I just put it in here because you guys all work in traumatic and trauma-rich environments. And it's just a reminder of self-care and really being able to recognize that, a lot of our staff, including ourselves, are potentially at risk of vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, which will impact our ability to be able to have compassion towards others. Because when you're fatigued, you don't care anymore. You're just, whatever, what's the use? Like, you use that, like you're compassion fatigued, right? So how can we be able as a staff and as a group be able to recognize that, right? And I just put some of these symptoms in here, but also focusing on our self-care and how can we create an environment where, this is the most important part there, we're not sliming people, but we're creating a space where we can have low impact debriefing, right? So sometimes it can be informal or formal. And really what it is just is being aware that you've been through an experience that might be a little bit eating you up inside, but also when you are meeting with someone, it's being able to have providing them with fair warnings, being able to get their consent, and only debriefing and like having limited disclosure of the events. like the nitty gritty stuff sometimes we can avoid, but just sharing the overall Reader's Digest version. You know, sometimes we're like, the details, like, man, you traumatize everybody, right? Like, sometimes it's being like, okay, I'm aware. I want to talk to someone about this, but be strategic. But there's also EAP programs that are good too. I always say neutral spaces are good because sometimes what happens, you're slamming with another person and it's a back and forth, right? You're just re-traumatizing each other. So I always say, like, I've been to therapy. It's good, man. Like, it helps. Just having that space of debriefing with an EAP worker that's neutral and independent, right? And last but not least, there are self-care tools for you guys. There's different ways we can do it. We can have our comfort baskets in our own offices for ourselves. We can do a professional quality of life scale, which is in there. I will send that to you guys. These are things that you can use within your own space, knowing your distress signals, knowing your comfort measures that work for you. How can you apply it to yourselves when you're in a zone of distress? And last but not least, these are all the resources that I put in there that are available to you guys. So now we have the Mental Health and Addictions Helpline, which is good. We have that in the province. We have Bridge the Gap. We have all these 211. You guys all know what that is. That's like the home base of everything. And I put our sites there. I put a different variety of sites in there for trauma-informed practices. I will send that to you guys later. Like all the websites, the links to the videos, they're great. It talks about values, dopamine, goal setting with clients, emotional regulation, right? And this is it. So, quick review: connection, trauma-informed spaces, practices, language, harm reduction, how they overlap. It's all trauma-informed practices anyways. Don't call it harm reduction. You can have a Narcan kit and you're good. If you don't have a Narcan kit and you have like your CPR trained, great. It's just really about defining what you guys feel is acceptable for you in your agency and your roles, and just doing that. And then afterwards, we looked at harm reduction and what they are and the core principles. And we looked at self-care. Was that okay?
Yep. Good.
Just basic stuff. And if you guys need anything, you have my email at the end. Fire me an email anytime. If you need something, I'll be like, I can send that to you or whatever. And anything I can do to help, I'm here. So, and I will send Nancy. What I'll do is I'll send you the documents. If you can forward it to the people. So if it doesn't work, we'll try to figure something out. Christ, I'll go. I shouldn't use that word there, but Sharon, I'll go to the house of Naz and I'll give you the stuff on a USB if I have to. Okay? So we'll figure it out a way. Do you guys have any questions or anything? Because I know it's almost lunchtime. Was it valuable stuff?
That's good. Very good.
This
Cool.
was fantastic, Serge. I got a lot of tools and I'm definitely going to be putting them into some of my courses. And can I reference you? Can I quote you in some of these things?
Yes, just put a nice background like the Gabor Mate thing.
Will
Which I
do.
am not a guru. I am not a guru. And that's the one thing I wanted to tell you guys. None of us are experts in the lives of others. So that's the one thing I always say. I'm not an expert in this. I know people are experts of their own lives. I just want to create a space that they can share me their expertise. Really, that's what it is, guys. All this stuff. You guys are the best. Did I ever tell you that? I'm not saying this because I'm like at a Department of Health level and like I'm a BS politician. I'm not. Okay? I do appreciate what you guys do. It's not easy work, so I appreciate all you guys. And if you guys ever need anything, you can reach out to me anytime, okay? Love you guys. Thank you. Have a good day, and we'll talk later, okay?
Thank you, Serge. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.